can be only one podcast, and may it be the Princess of the Universe. Hi, folks. I'm Matt.
And I'm Wes.
Hey, welcome back.
So glad to be here.
Hey, I'm glad to have you back. It is. We're going to talk about season 3. Season 3 wrapped a few weeks ago, and we're going to talk about the Dark Side of the Ring here. Glad to have you back. I've had a few people impressed with your wrestling knowledge, your wrestling know-how.
Well, if I can impress a few people, that's more than I impress normally.
All right, there's a lot of episodes in this one. They just keep adding more and more episodes, I guess, because it's getting popular.
Well, it'll be interesting to see where they go after this, because I think that they have kind of ruffled the feathers of a lot of industry people.
I did hear that. Jim Ross. Jim Ross said he regrets being on it.
Yeah, Rob Van Dam.
Really?
Yeah, one of the referees, I can't think of.
Isn't Jericho a producer? Chris Jericho?
He's tied into it.
Okay.
But
well, Jim Ross said he likes the guys, but it's just kind of a little too.
Yeah,
but what did they think? It's Dark Side of the Ring. We're not telling happy stories here. We're not going to put you in a positive
light. A lot
of
people. Things can be taken out of context when you have crafty editing, and I believe that was his.
Oh, so some of that going on.
Yeah, I think there was some cut and paste in the Plane Ride from Hell and episodes like that where it was a little more condemning rather than enlightening.
Documentary style.
Gotcha.
Instead of documenting, it was
kind of like the Beanie Baby story when we talked about the lady who had the price guide and she tried to come off like a saint, but she's out there hustling,
throwing $5,000 in beanies.
Right.
She was the one that fueled that market and made money off that market.
Correct.
Because her guide was a big seller.
And they definitely edited it and put that story together where if you were paying attention, you go, no, she's just a crook.
You're no saint. Yeah, you're just as dirty. Okay, no, I get it. All right, well, I'm enjoying this. I don't know where else they'll go. I mean, I'm sure there's tons of other stories to tell, but
oh yeah,
you just think participation for this will be lower.
I think that Do
you think Plane Ride from Hell was the lightning rod that kind of changed it too?
Well, I think when you go after somebody, and it says. Painted Flair in such a bad light.
Gotcha.
And I think it painted him more in a bad light because of everything that has happened since then.
Right.
With society and the new awareness that people have in workforce environments, personal environments, and the emotional state of everyone. It's not helping anything because the past 2 years everyone has went banana, as Pat Patterson would say.
That's true.
I think that has a lot to do with it.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's over. I just think that they may have to be a little more creative.
Yeah, on what stories they tell and based off what participation they get.
They may have to have a better ending than some of these do, where they kind of just end and you kind of go, ugh, I feel it's kind of like when you eat too much and you're just like,
well, again,
I shouldn't have ate all this.
Dark Side of the Ring.
Correct.
Not happy stories. When I think of Dark Side,
I agree.
So,
I think that,
I mean, I understand it sucks to be edited that way. That's the business, and these people know the business. And it's not like they were saying, "Yeah, we're going to shed a positive light on wrestling here."
Well,
I mean, there are tragedies, but I understand. I totally agree with you. Assassinating someone's character, going out of your way to turn it into something different than what it was. It was supposed to be shame on all of them, but it did turn into a hit piece on Ric Flair.
I think so.
Yeah. No, I agree with that.
Yeah.
So is it just that episode, or were there any others?
I think that by far
that outweighs anything else.
Right. They came out so strong. It just cast a different light on this.
Because I mean, in the past, they've actually called Vince McMahon out for getting Jimmy Snuka off murder. So I mean, worse has been, in my opinion.
Well,
when you're talking about felonies,
right? But if you look at the current state of the general public, does not know who Jimmy Snuka is.
No, that's
Lots
true.
of people in the general public have an idea of who Ric Flair is from sport teams, from him doing hummus commercials and whatever.
I agree. But Vince McMahon is also included in this. His name's been thrown around, but I guess he's Teflon.
Well, I mean, we'll get into that by the steroid trial.
That's true. All right, so Brian Pillman was their first two-parter, which I guess they're going with. Brian Pillman, I knew who he was. When I was getting reintroduced to wrestling, he was a past story. You would tell me about him, I think. You would tell me. That's how I kind of heard about him, because I wasn't watching back then. So what did you think? I mean, it was a great, just like every story, I think I've enjoyed all these episodes, except for that one we talked about in season 2 or whatever. I thought it was kind of
Gorgeous
bland.
Gino Hernandez, who you got all confused.
That was who it was.
Dino
Yeah, that's
Bravo.
what I got confused about. That was the one Gorgeous Gino didn't care about. But the other ones I felt are all compelling. And Brian Pillman, even though I know who he was, did not know his full story. Interesting. Was he part of the Attitude, the beginning of the Attitude era? Was he? It seemed
very,
like
very, very early. He was in with the when the Hart Foundation came back, and he was coming off his ECW run where he was the loose cannon. He had just gotten let out of his contract with WCW. So yeah, he was very much a pretty compelling, as you would say.
and kind of generated his own hype.
Yeah.
Which was an interesting story, which Jim Ross seemed to appreciate a little bit.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that the wrestling business, if anybody can, if you can outsmart your peers, you're doing something, because it's just basically full of con men.
Do you believe Eric Bischoff and his grand scheme, or whose story do you believe? Because they painted it as Eric Bischoff's the biggest fool.
Well, a lot of people like to paint Eric as the biggest fool because he made so many
boneheaded decisions.
Well, I think he made it's kind of like, all right, I'll compare it to this. When you think of Sylvester Stallone, you think of Rocky and Rambo, right?
Yeah.
Well, Stallone has also made some stinkers. Stop or My Mom Will Shoot.
Yeah.
So everybody has peaks and valleys. I think the fact that Eric made WCW such a powerhouse and did overtake the WWF for nearly 2 years and reset the whole wrestling landscape with Hogan turning heel, you can't take that away from him. You can say he's an idiot and but to do something that big,
and that's epic. You're right.
Correct. I mean, you did something no one else could do.
Yeah.
No one else has done since then.
No.
I mean, Vince is...
And that was forward thinking, because now we expect that to happen, but back then it didn't happen that much, correct?
Right. It was.
I mean, you had the flip flops. I'm not talking about that, but the one that you say, no, this guy is always.
Well, that
true.
Regenerated everyone's interest. It regenerated my interest into it.
Yes.
And
it was a bold move.
Yeah, and it worked. And he had and granted, people said, well, he took the concept from somebody else. Well, look, everybody steals something. And
it's how you pull it off is also the big thing. And so the way everything went down and the reaction, he had to be smiling.
Yeah.
So it definitely made some ingenious parts. So
as
you
far
think
as
he's both genius and
I think anybody that's been in that business long enough has done both. Okay. I don't think Eric is the fool people paint him as, but I don't necessarily think he's the genius that he professes to be.
Fair. Brian Pillman injured being in a wheelchair on, medication and whatnot, and then going out and wrestling the next night to no one knowing. That's incredible.
Well,
I know he's that badly beat up.
It was a different... The
era.
business, it operated differently. All sports operates differently now.
What did you think about Brian Pillman yourself?
I think well, I mean, when he was in WCW in the early 90s, he was everything you would want as far as what they would call a white meat baby face. I mean, he was good looking, in shape.
Right.
His promos were good enough to where people were they were with it. But he looked like what you would want to put on a lunchbox or any of that kind of marketing type stuff. You could put him on a magazine. So, I think he was pretty talented. And the fact that him and Austin were the Hollywood Blondes and they turned that into something that has lasted a long time because it was their idea type of thing where they ran with it.
And
Yes.
they both changed their personas in different ways, radical ways.
Sure.
And basically, very similar to Stone Cold, paved their own paths, you could say. They reinvented themselves.
Yeah, I mean, you could look at Brian getting hurt if he didn't get hurt, and what if Austin would have been paralyzed when no one dropped him on his head?
Yeah.
We could be talking about two different things that those guys went through.
They would have been a trivia question for wrestlers,
Right.
wrestling fans,
But I mean,
instead of legends.
He definitely had he definitely had a problem, but a lot of those guys have had problems.
That's true. That's true. A good 2-part series. I didn't know there was that much to work with him on. I expected him to be one of these episodes, but not a 2-parter. I was like, can they keep this interesting for 2? Yeah, they did.
Well, yeah, I think that they're pretty smart in the way they pick and choose these 2-part episodes.
I agree.
Where you want it to end and go, oh, that was good. It helped me the whole time.
You want to make sure there's enough material.
Right.
And then a good spot to continue the arc and what can we tell here and here. These are very well. I know we kind of talk about wrestlers not being happy about it now, but it is a good creative team behind the series. I will say that.
Well, and you talked about all these being kind of hit pieces. This is one of those stories where it ends on a better note with his son being in the business, and all of this stuff has happened where it just doesn't end where, Melanie's strung out on meth and needs a better dental plan and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
It could have ended that way where you kind of go, ugh, this is gross. But it ended on a good note, which shows that they can change the narrative if they want to.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
The next one was Ultraviolence of Nick Gage. Did not know anything about this guy. Had my mouth opened at the very beginning where he basically skewers himself and has blood coming out, and they basically showed that. I was like, whoa. Now, the Mrs. Surprisingly is into that kind of gore thing, real life, operations and stuff. I'm not. That kind of took me by surprise.
Neither am I.
Violent. That started off violently. And we've seen that backyard wrestling was nothing big back then. You always saw the home tapes. You maybe did it a little bit too. You heard about people smashing each other with fluorescent bulbs. It happened all the time.
Well, we had a Halloween party where our good friend Casey Hodge got hit with a steel chair by Heath Futch and had a blade ready and gigged himself. But when he fell in the kitchen, he hit our stove with his elbow and stabbed himself in the forehead. So when he came up, it was
everywhere.
Quite a sight. There was a fight in my house. I had to grab a guy. You never heard that story? We'll save that for off air. So yeah. Anyway,
are you serious? Wait, did Heath win? Did Heath get the belt?
No. It was a schmaz finish. It was a double disqualification.
I can't imagine. This is back before Heath went to bed at 7:30.
Obviously, yeah. Yeah.
I never heard the story.
Yeah, we'll save it for off air.
Okay.
Anyway, back to Nick Gage.
Okay. I'd say we need to get Heath back on, but now that the time change has happened, he goes to bed at 6 now.
I texted him today and said, I'm doing a podcast. Do you want to come
over? Oh, yeah, he's always
invited,
by the way.
He said, no.
We'll have to do this on a morning or something where he can wake up, stay awake for us. We'll offer him some coffee or something, or some Ensure. Whatever works better.
So Nick Gage.
Nick Gage, I never heard about him before. Interesting character. Loves the pain. It's a different type of wrestling. This is, more violent type.
It's very niche. This is not going to be on network TV.
Nick Gage is only going to be popular in those circles. And he's happy with that. King of the Anthill, which is fine. It's your own little fight club, your rite of passage. You do what you love. I found it interesting. I didn't even hear that he had fought... I lost his name. No. Well, Jericho, but he had fought the celebrity. David Duchovny? No.
David Arquette.
David Arquette. Thank you. Couldn't remember his name. I didn't even hear about that match. Yeah. I never even knew that was a thing. And then they got David Arquette to come in and talk about it. It was pretty funny, too.
Yeah. There's a documentary on David Arquette you should watch.
Oh, definitely. Then.
About wrestling.
Yeah. So the story goes, if anyone does not know one of the most shameful moments in WCW history, David Arquette officially won the WCW belt and it was to promote his new movie at the time, Ready to Rumble.
Correct.
That had a bunch of WCW wrestlers in it.
It was released a year too late. That's what it all comes down to.
Yeah. It would have been something cool and something big back then. Wrestling was on the
downside. They would have done it 1 year before that. It would not have came out quite as much of a turd.
It had gotten green lit when wrestling was at its peak.
Sure.
And, it just didn't get out in time. But they someone thought it was a good idea to give him the belt to kind of promote it.
Schiavone.
Oh, really? Tony Schiavone did?
Pitched the idea. Why doesn't Russo win it? I mean, he pitched it to Russo
and said,
why don't we let David win it?
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, of course, he has been the scorn of wrestlers since.
Russo, yes, very much so.
Russo, but also funny they didn't interview Russo in this episode, did they? About that,
they did not, bro.
Okay, but do you feel the same about Russo as Jim Cornette does?
I don't know if I feel about anything as strong about as Jim Cornette does. But
Jim Cornette shooting on Russo has been my favorite of the entire series so far.
Yeah, I think Russo's his track record speaks for itself.
Yeah, no, definitely. When he took over WCW, I mean it was already hodgepodge, but it just threw itself.
He didn't definitely. I think that he took over.
It was such a mess.
It was a sinking ship already.
But you can ride a sinking ship, as we've seen before, and he didn't make any choices to.
No, I'm not saying he made anything better by any means. But I think he walked into an environment that was.
Oh well, no, that's
unmanageable.
true. That's true. Unmanageable at the time, but you could have over time. Contracts had to expire.
Maybe, but I mean, you look at TNA, he never did anything there. So
that's true. That's true. But, oh man, that's another one I got for you, too, but I'll have to save that one. I didn't know that he'd fought Nick Gage. I didn't know about this story. I was very impressed that he even got in the ring and did what he did. Had a pizza cutter in the face. But, wow. This is something you don't have to do, but he wanted to. And I think he got some respect, I guess, out of that. I don't know.
I mean, yeah, I think the documentary kind of highlights that. Another thing, and probably the people who are even listening to this know this, when Arquette was in WCW, the money he was paid, he donated it to, like, Pillman's family, to Drozdoff's family. So, I mean, the guy, he's a fan. You can't blame
he was
him.
a true fan. We should mention that. He was a true fan, yeah.
It's kind of like putting David Flair in there. I mean, you can't fault David Flair for getting into WCW. God, he hooked up with Stacy
And he
Keibler.
wasn't asking for the belt either.
Correct. They were like, here's an idea.
We're going to pitch you the belt. He's like, oh, okay. And that's kind of how it was. And he was a team player.
Sure.
Just going along with it. So, yeah, we should say that. But I didn't know anything this about him.
Right.
So I didn't know about his fight with Nick Gage and everything. But, yeah, really interesting one, though, I found. It was
quite a story, for sure.
Did you have to turn your head at all the blood? That was what we're talking about.
It was a bit much.
It's at the very beginning they show this. He is fighting this other guy. They smash it. The ring is surrounded by fluorescent bulbs. Hit the very first throw through the bulbs. He lands, instead of going through it, he lands on the shard, and it goes right up into one of his arteries underneath. We're keeping our arms close next to each other right now. But it goes right underneath his armpit and nicks a serious artery. And he's telling him, bandage me up, I'm going back out there. He said, Nick, you may die. You've lost a lot of blood. This is serious. And they have to airlift him out and everything. It was a big deal. But he's kind of a little crazy. You got to be a little crazy to be in that in the first place, but he's beyond crazy. So and I think it was called Fight to the Death or whatever, and he did die for a few seconds on the helicopter ride. So
yeah, I mean,
in a way, it helped his street ego. He thought it was going to hurt him because after the first throw, he's out. But then he died and came back to fight. So people love that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it's one of my favorite episodes. It's
a gritty one.
I'm not I don't enjoy that side of wrestling, so
no, yeah.
I'm not against it, but it's just not my thing to watch.
Back in the day, late night, it was a niche thing to watch, and now it's kind of run its course. That's why they keep having to be more and more extreme. And the thing is, like, how far is this going to go? And we're done with wrestling. Don't even put this in the category of wrestling now. This is just two people just beating the crap out of each other. That's all it is.
It's human cockfighting.
Yeah. There you go.
And not the other.
I don't know what the other type is. Anyway, all right. Next one is Collision in Korea. This was more documentary. Wasn't supposed to be a dark side, but just them going to North Korea for. I didn't know about this either. Mm-hmm. For a match and what it was like over there. That was great. I thought.
Yeah,
that was great. It's too bad they couldn't get Ric Flair an interview. Maybe next season. Oh wait. But no, I found that one to be really interesting.
No, I agree.
What it was like to go over in the communist world, to get their passports taken away, being guarded 24/7.
Yeah, where they were all about to short circuit.
And how they had a packed, stadium, a world record, but they were forced to be there, and they didn't know what they were watching the whole time. That's got to be eerie.
Yeah.
You got to be, like, I agree with Ric Flair. I would have kissed the ground that I was on when I got off the plane immediately and been like, thank God I'm out of that country or whatever. But they did have the big, they did get into it at the title match there. So it was something, but wow. That's...
Yeah, Bischoff has, on his podcast, they covered that in depth. And
oh, really? What was there anything else that was missed that...
I really wouldn't. I think it's just more like Bischoff just kind of just adding a little bit more. No, his podcast came out before this episode did, but he just had a little bit more layers of his time there.
Well, I loved him talking about jogging one day and everyone getting out of the way. They thought, oh, white devil, because that's what they're told. These people are awful people and everything.
Right.
And the fake, they had to pretend to give homage to one of their old leaders. Creepy.
Yeah.
Because the news media's like, hey, look at these. These are people around the world who know of our great leader, and they've come to pay homage to him. I don't know who
Creative editing.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. Next one is Becoming Warrior. My wife watched this one. The Road Warrior one, right? This is no. This is Ultimate Warrior.
Correct.
Becoming Warrior. This is great.
Pretty good.
I knew most of it, but they still told it from a different angle.
His first wife is the one that's, she stole the show.
She did. And I haven't heard much from when you do Ultimate Warrior, because there's been a few of these documentaries or episodes on him, but this was from a different angle. And that's another thing I should say about, I love about Dark Side of the Ring, because the Chris Benoit story, we've heard it. The Owen Hart story, we've heard it. A lot of these we've heard before, but this is from a different perspective, and they bring different elements.
Say a different point of view.
A different point of view. So Becoming Warrior, a different point of view, and I think that one ended well. A
little more humanizing.
A little bit humanizing, but I will say that I did love how I think it was Jim Ross. Very energetic, worst wrestler he'd ever seen. Same thing with who was it? Was it Jim Cornette on that episode?
Yeah, Cornette.
God bless America. When Cornette's on an episode, I know I'm going to love it. Can be about anything. Ants that were an ant bet that had formed during a wrestling event outside. If Jim Cornette's commenting on it, I'm glued to the seat, man. They really should invest in making him a mainstay on the show, because he's just. I watched the Dairy Queen video, I should say. You told me off the air on the last episode, watch Dairy Queen, which has got to be a great. It's so good, and that's him when he doesn't know the camera's going. He's not even hamming it up for the camera. Is the thing?
Yeah, he was just mad and hungry.
You got one job.
Oh man,
that's great.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
But anyway, I don't want to get off the topic. But Becoming Warrior is nice, because I love how his wife talks about the turning point when she lost Jim.
Sure. And
got the Ultimate Warrior. Like, there used to be a difference.
Sure.
And then along the way, this is where it snapped, and this is where it went awry. And I don't think I'd heard the Jake the Snake story, where Jake the Snake was thinking about, 10 years, 20 years, whatever, how many years it was, I'm getting revenge on this guy.
Well, Jake is
stiffing me, but Jake's Jake.
Yeah.
But the thing is, though, that Ultimate Warrior came up to him and, gave an apology. And Jake the Snake, accepted everything. I thought that was a good story.
No, it was a good story, but it's, it's Jake.
It's Jake. No, and they'll get to Jake here. We'll get to Jake. Yeah. But no, I thought Becoming Warrior, and this is the thing. If you think, well, I think I know everything there is to know about the Ultimate Warrior, I'm going to skip this episode. Don't. don't. I think there's just too many perspectives and too many angles that they can look at, and they put things under a story that every wrestler knows, every wrestling fan knows. Even someone as light as me, who was only there for the big pop like everyone else, and I could be a fair weather wrestling fan, you could say.
Sure.
And then and jumped out. So even I know a lot about it, but the thing is, it still shows new angles, like you said, the wife and everything. It's interesting.
Yeah, she saved that show.
Yeah. The next one is The Shadow of Grizzly Smith. Dadgummit.
Ooh.
I accidentally played that. Shadow Grizzly Smith. I didn't know about Grizzly Smith. Didn't know who he was. Didn't know what was going on. And you're right, Oomph. Wow. What? That's... Did you know him as a wrestler? Did you know about him? Did you know of him?
I knew of him.
Because that is a... well, we should mention, he was a wrestler, had his own little family. This is Jake the Snake, by the way. And
Jake's daddy.
Jake's daddy, which explains a lot about Jake the Snake. His sister, who was a wrestler, I never knew about her, by the way.
Baby Doll.
Never heard about Baby Doll.
Well, no, not Baby Doll. Not Baby Doll. Sam Houston was Jake's brother who married Baby Doll.
Oh, you're right.
Sorry about that.
Sam Houston.
Yeah.
Wait, who was his daughter?
Well, his daughter, one of them was the one that went missing, and the other one was like Rockin' Robin.
Rockin' Robin, that was the one. Yeah, Rockin' Robin was the one I meant to talk about. So that was interesting. I didn't know they had their own little dynasty, in a way, family dynasty, and they weren't really connected like the Harts or the what were the Texans?
The Von Erichs.
Von Erichs and stuff like that. They weren't, big family name. They could have been, I guess, but they didn't. They went off their own. But what a mess of a family, which to me explained a lot about Jake the Snake. I don't know how you feel about him, but I did like how he was saying, there is no whatever his real name is. There's just Jake, because he doesn't want to think about that life he had before him. Well, I wouldn't either. A man.
Well, these guys are characters. I mean, that's why Jim Hellwig became the Warrior.
That's true.
So,
Escapism.
Correct.
Yeah. But Grizzly Smith had a really, you talking about dark. We're talking like pitch black side of the ring is what they should have said. Because, it's
troubling.
A little creepy. There's young girls involved. That's all I'll say. Like children involved is the creepy stuff about it.
Very unsettling.
It is. And Grizzly Smith is a big bear of a man. I mean, you think about the outdoor wilderness giant. That is him.
Yeah, big
it's
dude,
like
6'7", something like that.
Yeah,
300 pounds.
Every image you have in your head, that's Grizzly Smith right now. I don't even have to ask you what you're thinking about, because if you think about mountain man, grizzly, pioneer dude living on the land, that's Grizzly Smith there. Yeah. But interesting though. I mean, that was probably
Grizzly
one of
worked in the business a long time. I had a friend of mine when he worked independent shows in the early 90s, was around Grizzly. Said Grizz was a great guy to be around. He got along with the boys.
Well, yeah, he had his own little club circuit, right?
Well, he worked for Bill Watts in Mid-South.
Okay.
He was kind of Watts' right-hand man in a way. A different way than Jim
So
Ross.
he had two personalities.
Well, we have a daytime life and a nighttime life, and his was pretty dark.
Pretty dark, yeah. Pretty dark. Interesting, though. Is it? And that was the one that ended with a little warning, or no, a public service announcement, right? About the child abuse and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, that's a really hard hitting one, and again, you kind of see why no one wanted to take on the family name either, and they all wanted to create their own personas away from them, and they don't want to go back.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I found that one to be, again, something else. Another wrestler I didn't know who was. I didn't know about this family. I didn't know Jake the Snake had other wrestlers.
Yeah.
And even if I knew about them, I wouldn't have thought they were connected and whatnot. But, again, not afraid to tackle a topic. Dark Side of the Ring.
It's much more of a Dateline NBC type story than a wrestling story. It's that's true.
Twisted up. That's true, yeah. But, I mean, And I like how it's not all about characters that everyone knows, not the popular 80s, not the popular, not just WWE.
Well,
they go to smaller promotions that were big in their area.
Well, I think that highlights why the wrestling business was the wrestling business that way back then, because it originated out of carnivals and a bunch of sideshow type thing. I mean, there's a reason why in Louisiana in the early 80s, wrestling was so huge, just because you had nothing going on here.
Yeah. That was your form of entertainment.
Yeah. I mean, those, back then, if you had 3 stations and wrestling's on one of them, then those are movie stars, basically.
Yeah.
At least here it was.
Yeah. No, you're right. All right. Well, this is a pretty big season. So what we'll do is we'll stop right here and we'll come back and finish off with part 2 on Princes of the Universe.